I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District for June 25th. No, not June 25th. How about June 3rd, 2020? And I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'm going to read this for the public. Due to the situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus in the Executive Order N3520, so long as state or local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures, Vallecitos Water District will hold future meetings via teleconferencing and allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically. During this period of time, Vallecitos Water District will not be making any physical locations available for members of the public to observe the meeting and offer public comment. The public is encouraged to watch and participate in the meeting from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on the agenda page located on the main page of the district's website. Public comments or questions can be submitted to the following email address: publiccomment@vwd.org. All written comments that are received at least 90 minutes before the meeting will be provided to the board, and a record of the receipt of comment will be noted during the meeting. Members of the public viewing the meeting via the Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to provide input at the appropriate time by utilizing that raise hand function. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website, www.vwd.org/meetings. And with that, we'll start with roll call. So, Director Sanilla.
Present.
Is the director, I don't hear him.
Present.
Oh, thank you. Director Hernandez.
Present.
Director Martin.
Present.
Director Elitharp.
Present.
And Director Evans is here as well. So we're all here in attendance and we're ready to, for the adoption of today's agenda. However, I would like to move action item 2.3, the fiscal budget of 2021, ahead of the other action items and take care of it first. If there are any other changes or additions or not, then I need a motion for us to adopt the agenda.
Hernandez, move to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Martin.
Martin, a second. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of June 3rd. Roll call vote. Sanella?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Elitharp?
Yes.
And Evans, that's unanimous. Okay, next item is public comment. And I'm wondering if we have any that have been come in, Director General, Mr. Glenn.
We have not received any emails expressing public comment, and I don't see any raised hands from the attendees that are on the list right now.
Okay, and we'll have to, I'll try to remember to check in on that on the items, but I will rely on you a little bit too.
Yeah, I'll help as I can.
Okay, it's kind of hard to do that. Moving on to consent, the consent calendar. Are there, do I have a motion to accept?
Sanella, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Martin and seconded by Sanella that we approve the consent calendar. Roll call vote. Director Sanella?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Elitharp?
Yes.
And Director Evans will approve as well, so that passes unanimously. We will now be moving on to action items. And as I said, we're moving item 2.3 on the budget into first position. And I guess we'll hand that over to Wes or to you, Glenn.
I'll take it, President Evans. So thank you, President Evans and members of the board, and good evening. So the item before you for consideration is the adoption of the fiscal year 2021 budget. The draft budget was last presented to the board at the May 20th meeting. And as you'll recall, this has been a really challenging year for preparing budgets. We were well underway on the budget preparation when COVID-19 descended upon our area and the world. And so the last few months have been a whirlwind of activity to estimate the financial impacts that COVID may have on the district and to modify the proposed budget, all while trying to ensure that the financial impacts to our customers are taken into consideration. As we have in the meetings leading up to tonight, we will be showing the board a 5-year financial forecast in conjunction with the budget. So in that forecast, we'll be showing the assumptions we've made for future rate increases needed to fund district operations. We'll also show the board our assumptions for rate increases from our single biggest cost driver, which is the water that we purchase from the San Diego County Water Authority. At the end, however, the board will only be adopting a 1-year budget, spanning the period of time from July 1, 2020 until June 30th, 2021. Additionally, the board is not being asked to adopt any rate increases on either water or wastewater at this time. The rate increases that are going to be shown are for future years, and they're for budgeting and planning purposes only. Any future rate increases will be subjected to the rigorous requirements of the California Proposition 218 process and will be based on the financial information that's available to the district at the time the rates are considered. Tonight's presentation is going to be essentially the same as what was presented on May 20th. The primary difference is that staff has incorporated into the budget the direction provided by the board at the May 20th meeting regarding the CalPERS unfunded accrued liability additional discretionary payment, which is in the amount of $4 million. So unless the board has any preliminary questions for me, Finance Manager Owen will now walk you through the budget presentation, and staff will be available to answer any questions that you may have.
Directors, do any of you have a question for Glenn? Looks like it's yours, Wes.
All right, Wes, take it away.
Good evening, President Evans, members of the board. It is my pleasure to present to you the fiscal year 2021 recommended budget. Can't have a budget presentation without the budget party page. And I want to say welcome to the 7th budget meeting for fiscal year 2021, and hopefully the best one yet. Coming to you from the beaches of Waikiki, but due to some technical difficulties, I have to come to you from my office. But nonetheless, I'm excited to be here. So, agenda for tonight, we're going to go through the budget again. And it's the 3rd time you get to see it. I know you're very excited to see it for the 3rd time. And we've gone over the budget process and calendar a couple times, so I'll try to kind of jump ahead to where we are on that. Then I'll go over the COVID-19 budgeting. I'll talk about the operating expenses for water and sewer, salaries and benefits, and break that down. And Mike's going to talk to you about water sales, purchases, and sewer revenue. Then I'll come back and I'll talk to you about the capital budget and reserve balances. Then we're going to talk about the CalPERS UAL funding. And as General Manager Pruitt mentioned, this is the only change to the May 20th budget presentation is to the CalPERS UAL funding. We took board's direction and incorporated it into the fiscal year 2021 budget and the 2022 plan. Finally, we'll bring staff's recommendations.
Excuse me 1 second. Wes, you keep fading in and out. I don't know if anyone else is having that problem.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wes,
slightly hard to understand.
when you turn your head, you go break up, but when you're facing directly straight, then it comes clear.
See if I can bring it closer.
No, yeah, no moving.
Okay, no moving. Well, that's too bad. You're not going to get all my jokes if you can't hear me.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to speak straight ahead then.
Thank you.
Okay, so starting off with the budget process and calendar, as I mentioned, we're going to kind of skip through to where we are now, but I did want to mention that the process usually starts in December, and Ed's crew starts putting together their budget, and they work hard through the months of December, January, and February. Ed gets the request from staff and does necessary cutting, and then he submits that to accounting in February. So in February, the internal process starts in the accounting and finance department. And from February until April 27th, we actually had 4 finance committee meetings. And during that time internally, we were compiling the budget based on the budget requests. making cuts where necessary, bringing that to the Finance Committee, making any cuts based on the Finance Committee, revising and refining it. And actually, April 27th, we had what we call the base budget. So at that time, that probably would have been brought to the board as a proposed or recommended budget. However, as General Improvement mentioned, COVID-19 hit. So we had to go back and look at all the areas of the budget and estimate the financial impacts on the district. So using the most relevant data from the subject matter experts, we actually developed a COVID-19 financial plan, and we brought that plan to the board at the board workshop on May 11th, and we talked about that plan and discussed the base budget. And from that meeting, we incorporated board requested items, and actually brought the draft proposed budget on May 20th. And again, that budget's the same as the one you're seeing today, minus the PERS change. And then we've incorporated the requests from that meeting and revised and refined it to what we believe now is an excellent recommended budget for approval. So next we'll talk about is budgeting for COVID-19. So in order to budget for COVID-19, as I mentioned, we had to find sources to help us estimate the impact. So we went out and got the most relevant, reliable, and recent sources we could get from subject matter experts. And those being the American Water Works Association and Raftellus. And we used their recommendations and methodology to apply it specifically to Vallecitos Water District and our customer base and composition. And the major impacted areas, as you can imagine, for water were lost water sales. So because of the decline in commercial customer usage, we estimate the lost water sales to be $1.7 million. That will have an offsetting decrease in water purchases of $870,000. But then we looked at the other major impacted areas. And for example, we're not locking customers at all. So if we're not locking customers during the full year of 2021, and the other thing I should mention is that we estimated the impact of COVID to be 2 full years. So all of fiscal year 2021, and then a 50% recovery in 2022. And we believe that assumption to be actually very conservative, especially given the current conditions where it looks like things are hopefully recovering. Keep your fingers crossed. But lock charges, since we won't be collecting lock charges for the full fiscal year 2021, all the revenue that was budgeted for that, we're estimating to be lost at $243,000. Delinquency fees, since when customers call in and request that we waive late fees, we're estimating we'll lose about 70% of what we had originally budgeted for late fees, and that's $136,000. And also increased bad debt expense. Customers won't be able to pay their bill due to financial hardship. And using the Raftellus methodology, we're estimating that our bad debt will increase at about 10 times the normal amount and will go up to about $322,000 for fiscal year 2021. So the total COVID impact for water, we're estimating at $1.6 million. So looking at that, as I mentioned, we went and looked at all areas of the budget. We looked at the materials and services. We looked at all other areas. And some of the major areas, of course, were the capital expenditures. So looking at CIP projects, we were able to identify 9 projects that we could revise to spend the money in fiscal year 2022 versus 2021. And that resulted in $710,000 savings to the budget for fiscal year 21. And looking at vehicles, we found some vehicles that we could potentially wait another year to purchase. And that resulted in $144,000 in savings for water. And then we looked at all the operational cuts. We went through the whole thing, but because we'd already worked on the budget for 6 months and had it pretty much down to the absolute necessities, we were able to find cuts. For example, we eliminated all travel for district employees with the exception of about $10,000 to be used at the discretion of the general manager. We found other cuts in IT and buildings and grounds and other cuts that resulted in $87,000 operational savings. So the total COVID offsets that we found were $941,000 for fiscal year 2021. So looking at the sewer component of that, it's very similar to water. Lost sewer revenue is estimated at $770,000. Delinquency fees at $46,000. Bad debt expense, again, 10 times the normal amount at $128,000. And the total COVID impact is estimated to be $944,000. For sewer, the major difference is that sewer has a lot of capital projects. So we really went through, and I said we went through the budget with a fine-tooth comb and going through all the capital projects. There were a lot of sewer capital projects, and And because of the high dollar amount and the fact that we said maybe wouldn't be possible for staff to actually get those projects done, we're actually able to find $1.5 million in savings in capital project revisions. And then delayed vehicle purchases, we found $138,000 in savings. And operational cost cuts resulted in $67,000 in savings. So the total COVID offsets found by going through this detailed analysis were $1.7 million for fiscal year 2021. So next we're going to talk about operating expenses, unless there are any questions. And moving on to the budget page, this is page 2 of the budget, summarizes it. We'll call this our home page as usual. And the budget for fiscal year 2021 is budgeted for $90.6 million as compared to $98.1 million for fiscal year 2020, a decrease of about $7.5 million. The top 4 pieces of the pie are reserve funded. So we're going to focus on the bottom 3 first. And water purchases is the majority of. Talk about that after I present on the other 2, which are water operations and sewer operations. So looking at water operations, it's $12.8 million, or 14% of the total budget. And going to the water operations summary page, which is page 10 of your budget, this pie chart shows that water purchases are 70% of the water operating expense budget. And as General Manager Pruitt mentioned also, our major supplier is the Water Authority. So when the Water Authority raises their rates, it has a significant impact on our budget. The other 30% is operations and maintenance at 19%, general and administrative or G&A at 7%, and engineering at 4%. So I'll break that down a little further. And this is a summary of page 11 of your budget, and the details to this are by department are on pages 12 through 14. You also have all the details for the materials and services packet that we provided last time. That hasn't changed. So if you want to see the $100 amount items, you can look there. But summarizes it, and looking at the total change for water operating expenses, it's budgeted to decrease by $1.6 million from fiscal year 2020 to 21. Majority of that's water purchases, but Mike will talk about that. I'm going to go into the other components. And operations is budgeted to increase by $94,000. That's mainly as a result of increase in power costs for pumping, and that's budgeted to increase by $128,000. Support's budgeted to increase by $494,000. That's the bad debt expense increase that we talked about before. So that's budgeted as a result of COVID, the increase to $322,000. Actually, the increase by $322,000. So that's the majority of the 494. The rest is IT contracts increasing by about $70,000 and regulatory fees of about $53,000. So next, look at sewer operations. So sewer operations are $13.3 million, or 15% of the total budget. And if we break that down, this is page 20 of your budget. This pie chart shows sewer operations broken down by component or function. And as you can see, the majority of sewer operations is treatment at 46%. This is made up of costs from Encina and Metal Arc plant, the reclaimed water costs, and the reclaimed costs are recovered through reclaimed water sales. So we're going to look at the other 3 components. Well, we're actually going to talk about all of it. So here's a summary, which is on page 21 of your budget. And looking at this, total sewer revenues decreased, or is budgeted to decrease by $492,000. And that's a result of COVID decrease in sewer sales, which was around $700,000. And total operating expenses for sewer is budgeted to decrease by $935,000, mainly as a result of decreases in treatment costs. And that's going to have a decrease in Metal Arc costs of about $300,000. And the Encina ADP, or additional discretionary payment for their unfunded accrued liability, has actually been moved to be funded by reserves instead of operations, as it should be. And finally, support is budgeted to increase by $93,000, and that's as a result of the increased bad debt expense due to COVID. So that's sewer operations. Next, we're going to look at salaries and benefits, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail this time about salaries and benefits. So if there are no questions on operations, we'll start that adventure.
Okay, any questions, comments? Looks like you're good, Wes.
Okay, here we go. Salaries and benefits budgeted for fiscal year 2021. Total salaries are budgeted to increase by $210,000. That's mainly as a result of the increase, or the COLA actually, which is $195,000 for the year. Are budgeted to decrease by $530,000, and that's as a result of decrease in PERS of $280,000 and the decrease in insurance of $270,000. Group insurance increasing by $270,000 because we fully funded our OPEB trust. So by fully funding the trust, we're able to the expenses for retiree medical.
Cutting out again.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
At the moment,
Okay.
oh, you're not talking.
So group insurance decreased by $270,000 budgeted because we fully funded the OPEB trust. By fully funding the trust, we are able to pay the retiree medical expenses out of the trust instead of out of operating expenses. So that saves the district well, it's actually more like $390,000 for this fiscal year. So then that being said, total salaries and benefits is budgeted to decrease by $320,000 for fiscal year 21 versus fiscal year 20. Now that's really important. I know that we presented that before, but I can't stress like that. The decrease in salaries and benefits from year to year is a major accomplishment for the district, and we've been able to accomplish this by taking proactive initiatives. And I want to demonstrate some of these in the next few slides. So this is my colorful slide, and I've showed this to you before, but the bottom half represents salaries and the top half represents benefits. And I've also told you that over the last 5 years, we've been able to maintain salaries and benefits at a steady level by scrutinizing positions and looking at them as they become vacant and efficient operations. We've even realized the budget to actual savings over the last 4 years. But this is, in presenting that and saying it, I want to really stress how major and important of an accomplishment that is and how we've been able to do that. And as I mentioned, we've done it through initiatives, and I want to go through some of these. So in order to do that, first we have to look at staffing levels. So this slide shows the full-time equivalent employees that are authorized by the district. So authorized full-time employees from 2015 to 2021. The bottom half of the chart shows the filled positions, and the top are authorized and vacant. Those could be positions that at the end of the fiscal year, people had retired or had left the district and they just weren't filled at June 30th, or it could be positions that we were scrutinizing and waiting to fill based on need. So looking at this, you can see in 2015, the total number of authorized positions was 116 or 115.5. By 2021, we've reduced those positions to 109. So how have we done that? Well, in 2017, we eliminated 3.5 positions. And then again, in 2018, we eliminated another 4 positions. So eliminating those positions and keeping those vacant positions has saved the district hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm going to show you that in the next couple slides. So looking at that, the first initiative, or the elimination of the 3.5 positions in 2017, by doing that, we were able to save the district, or the district saved $245,000 in salaries and $60,000 in benefits, for a total of $305,000 on an annual basis. In 2018, by eliminating 4 positions, we were able to save the district $286,000 in salaries, $70,000 in benefits, and $356,000 in total on an annual basis. And that's cumulative to the 2017 savings. Now in 2020, at the end of the year, we have 2 vacant positions that are not funded for fiscal year 2021, but are authorized positions. So by not funding those positions or budgeting for them or spending the money, we're saving salaries of $250,000, benefits of $61,000, and total salaries and benefits of $311,000 for every year that they're not filled. In addition to eliminating positions and keeping vacant positions, the district has taken initiatives to save on benefits as well. And through guidance from the board and taking action based on that guidance, we've taken 2 major initiatives. And the first one of those was fully funding the OPEB trust, as I mentioned. By fully funding that trust, we were able to pay the expenses out of the trust and save $390,000 a year in operating expenses, and that's savings directly to the ratepayers. And by 2025, because that expense will be growing, we're estimating that savings to grow to $440,000 a year. The other major initiative, and one that we discussed at the last meeting, was pre-funding the PERS UAL. By pre-funding the PERS UAL, not only did the district save so far $10.8 million, but it'll be a cumulative somewhere around $20.1 million when we pay off the total liability. We are also reducing the required UAL payment on an annual basis. So for fiscal year 2021, the original required UAL payment was $1.3 million. The revised payment after we made the $8 million contribution is down by $487,000. It's now $850,000. So the savings for fiscal year 2021 is $487,000. For the next year, fiscal year 2022, that savings will increase to $860,000. And that's based on my estimations and calculations, which hopefully are pretty accurate because I've done a lot of work on it. And so the total savings based on the initiatives taken from guidance from the board and taken by management are salary savings on an annual basis of $781,000, savings of $1,068,000, and the total annual savings based on these initiatives is $1,849,000, and that amount is increasing every year. So I figured that was a pretty significant thing to share with the board, so I wanted to put it together and show it to you today.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Wes?
Yes.
I want to applaud you for that. The board is obviously impressed and proud of that. I think the board should pat themselves on the back for agreeing to the pre-funding of the OPEB and the change in the PERS UAL. But I think on staffing, having been here in prior years, I don't feel our staff was ever not hardworking and a very lean machine. So we understand that when we say we eliminated positions, it didn't just mean things weren't having to be done anymore. It really meant that employees had to step up and often do more than they did before. So that's a reason to applaud and congratulate everybody. So thank you. Thank you for those initiatives and for sharing them. Really appreciate it.
And if I can add to that too, over those 7 years, as we eliminated 6 positions over the 7 years, our number of customers has been increasing, our number of meters has been increasing, and the overall need for services has been increasing, and we've actually reduced staffing levels. So it is pretty impressive.
It's very impressive. Thank you.
So next we're going to talk about water purchases, and I'll pass it over to Mike Arthur. Is Mike here?
Mike, you're not on.
Sorry, I'm talking, but no one's listening. Kind of like at home with my kids.
Actually, it sounded better when you were on mute.
That's what my wife says. So thank you, Wes, President Evans, members of the board. So if we get to the next slide, Wes. This is just a breakdown of our customer base. I just wanted to share with you and remind you again that about 70% of our customer base is residential. About 10% of our customer base is the commercial, industrial, and other, which would probably be the most affected by the COVID-19. They do make up 10% of our sales volume, but only 8% of our revenue base. And then what I wanted to do with the next slide, what I want to do is get to the aha moment a little bit quicker. But in order to do that, I want you to promise me not to fall asleep afterwards. So it's important to note that, as General Manager Perlman stated, that we're only looking at adopting the 2021 budget, not rates. However, we did use some rate projections in developing the budget. So looking at the bottom line real quick, the purchase water, the Water Authority, our overall water supply costs are going up 4.63%. And as Wes mentioned, these purchases make up 70% of our water budget. So by just using the simple math, I know Director Elithar is probably getting his calculator out right now. The 70% of the 463 means that an approximate 3.25% increase without taking our remaining budget into account. For rate increases for water, we assumed a 3.3% overall rate increase that's going to be effective February 1st, 2021, and no increase for sewer. So the combined net effect on the average single-family residence would be about 2.34%. And I'll have a slide later on that'll break down the actual bill of a average single-family residence. So then, although not adopting the budget for years beyond fiscal year 2021, we do estimate future year increases, mainly based on the pass-through charge from the Water Authority. So we estimate rate increases to our customers to range from anywhere from 3.8 to 4.1% annually over the next 4 years. Again, these numbers are mainly based on the pass-through amounts from the Water Authority, which are estimated in the budget anywhere from 4 to 4.2% over the next 4 years. And these rate increases are actually probably a little low from CWA. We'll probably see higher rate increases coming forward. So with the higher rate increases, most likely increase the amount that we would need to pass on to our customers. Sewer increases over the next 4 years. If you can go back one more, Wes, real quick. Sewer increases over the next 4 years are estimated between 2 and 3%. So the overall net impact to the average single-family residence customer would be about 3.3 to 3.6% per year. Again, we are not approving rates for any of the future years or used as a just to put into our budget. So the next slide. So what does this mean? What do these rate increases mean to our budget? Again, we talked about a 3.3% increase to the average customer to be effective March 1st for any water used in February, but not billed until March. Those 4 months of revenue increases would equate to about $360,000 in additional revenue for the fiscal year. Then the 4.6% increase from our water supplier from the County Water Authority would go into effect January 1st, 2021. That would increase our expenditures by $515,000. So just doing the simple math, the overall net effect to our budget is a deficit of $155,000 for this coming fiscal year. So what that means is that the district is absorbing some of the rate increases passed through from the Water Authority. So under normal circumstances, we would most likely be projecting an increase to the customer larger than 3.3%. Somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 4.75% would get us to a balanced budget. However, some of these built-in shortfalls are due to lower water demands due to COVID, and the rest is due to a timing difference. As I mentioned, the rate increase we didn't anticipate going into effect until February for March bills. So that's only 4 months out of the fiscal year. But the Water Authority's increases would be 6 months. So there is a little bit of timing difference in there. So if we go to the next one, what I'll do is show, we've seen at slides like this before, where the net effect of an average single family residence. Again, I want to stress again, we are not approving rates tonight, but I did want to show the aha moment of what would potentially be an effect to the customer. So currently the water only portion of the customer's bill using 13 units of water, and again, defined as a single family residence 5/8 inch meter, is about $92 per month. So adding in the sewer charges, their combined bill is about $131 a month. So with what we use in the budget, the 3.3% increase, the water only portion of an average customer's bill would go up from $92.42 to $95.50. And the total bill would go from $131.41 to $134.49. So the dollar increase per month would be about $3.08. Percentage-wise, that would mean, as we mentioned, it was a 3.3% water only, 0% sewer. So the combined rate increase would be about 2.3%. That's what we used in our budget. And up here, to see if there's any questions before I go ahead too far.
Are there, gentlemen?
No?
No? Okay, great.
So then the next slide just shows our water purchases. We are estimating that we purchase about 13,445 acre feet of water. And we do have 3 supplies of our water. Really, it all comes from the Water Authority, but we have our desal water, which is a contractual amount to purchase 3,500 acre feet. Our water agreement with Allevian for a water exchange of 2,750 feet annually. And whatever water we need in addition to that is made through the San Diego County Water Authority to make up that 13,445. So the price per acre foot to get to the budgeted amount of $29.9 million, we have our price per acre foot for each of our water supply. So our total commodity cost would be about almost $24 million. Our fixed charges from the Water Authority would be about $6 million a year. So the total cost of purchased water is $29.93 million. Before we move on, as we mentioned, it's important to note that our costs do make up 70% of our budget. And with the 4.63% increase from the Water Authority, that's equates to, as I mentioned, about a 3.25% overall to our budget, without even considering any other increases such as labor, materials, contracts, or energy costs. The next slide, Wes. So just to break down our total water revenue budget, the commodity charges that we charge the customers is their per unit charges, or the variable charge on a customer's bill. Totals about $26.8 million. The fixed portion, the RTS, which is ready to serve, is about $14.5 million. And other charges, which includes pumping charges and some other miscellaneous revenue sources, about $856,000, for a total water revenue budget revenue of $42.1 million for the coming fiscal year. As I mentioned before, we do a sensitivity analysis. What if demand is higher? What if demand is lower? Just to see what the net impacts would be. And just to take the extremes on these two cases, if water demand were to be 10% less than what we put in the budget, it would be a net overall revenue decrease of $1.4 million. If water sales were to flourish and we were to sell 10% more water, inversely, it'd be a $1.5 million positive impact to our budget. We kind of just try to use goalposts to see what would happen in some extreme cases. Next slide, I believe, is the sewer slide. So our sewer revenues for the year are projected to be about $20.2 million, of which $17.3 million is for their actual sewer service, about $2.8 million in reclaim sales, and about $110,000 in other revenue, for, again, the total of $20.2 million. That's the end of my presentation, and questions if there are any.
Are there any questions? No, I don't think.
Martin,
Pardon? Is that you,
Martin,
Director Martin? Okay.
not a question, just an observation. I'd like to thank Michael. Every year, his information gets better and better, but this year is like totally complete. Thank you very much, Michael. It's been great working with you this year.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Director Evans?
Yes, Director Spinella.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Director Martin's comment. I've seen, being on the finance committee and going through the different workshops and meetings that we've had on the budget so far, I think this is the 7th plus time I've seen the presentation, but it's the first time I've seen the real breakout over the last 3-4 years with the personnel and some of those things. And as you guys know, I think I brought that up specifically at the last meeting. And I appreciate that you guys addressed it, and it was very clear, and it was very helpful to have that information. So thank you.
All right. Moving on.
Hey, moving on. So I'm back.
Okay.
I know you're probably sick of me by now, but unfortunately, I'm back. And hopefully I have some more good news for you. So looking at the homepage again, next we're going to talk about capital expenditures. So the CIP budget for fiscal year 2021 is budgeted at $24.3 million, or 27% of the total budget. In the 5-year, well, we actually have a 5-year and a 10-year plan in our budget, and the 10 years of CIP amounts to $145 million. So I'm going to break out the $145 million for you as compared to last year's. The 2021 10-year plan, total CIP is budgeted or planned for at $145 million. That's compared to 40 last year, and that's made up of $46.6 million in carryover projects. And carryover projects are projects that were budgeted for in the previous budget and could be multi-year projects, and they just haven't been finished yet, so they're carried over to this year. $60.1 million in new CIP requests and $31.2 million in future CIP requests. Future CIP requests are just projects that will not be worked on in this budget year, but will be worked on in the 5-year and 10-year plan. And finally, the vehicles and equipment is budgeted at $881,000. That's an increase of about $200,000 from the previous budget, and that's due mainly to a Vector truck that we need to purchase for $500,000. So overall, the total capital budget is increasing from budget year for the 10-year plan by $5 million, and that's the result of the increase in the carryover projects of $1.6 million, and what looked like an increase in new CIP requests of $26.9 million but that's really not an increase. It's more a transfer of the 23.7 in future projects that were shifted here and have now become new CIP requests. So really the increase there is $3.2 million. So next thing we're going to look at is are the CIP costs by year over the next 5 years and by water and sewer. So this chart shows the CIP costs for water and sewer over the next 5 years and the total 10-year costs in the top right-hand corner. So as you can see, the CIP costs for fiscal year 21 for water are $3.2 million, and for sewer, $21.1 million. Of that sewer component, 5.5 is for Encina. And in the 5 years, the total CIP, or actually the 10-year budget, the total CIP is 145 million, 38.9 water, and 106 is for sewer. And of that 106, $30.4 million is for Encina. So that's the CIP costs over the next 5 years. Next, we're going to go into the CalPERS UAL funding policy, which, as I mentioned before, is the only change for this budget, and it's actually just for fiscal year 2022. So looking at the CalPERS UAL funding policy, this year it's actually changed from, it was a 3-year payoff plan last year, so now it's a 2-year. And our plan is to look at the total balance of $11.3 million over 2 years and pay it off at the discretion of the board, with $4 million being budgeted for in fiscal year 21. And staff will bring annual policy revisions to the board. So when we get the actuarial evaluations, we'll bring them to the board and we'll revise the amount for you and include it in future year's budget, and we'll revisit it at that time. And we'll maintain flexibility. We're not locking into anything with CalPERS, so we have no agreement with them to pay it off. There's no contractual amounts or anything like that. So we can keep looking at the amounts and change the policy as necessary. We'll avoid overpaying it. We're constantly communicating with CalPERS, getting current balances. So we'll avoid overpaying by doing that and assessing the last year's payment. And finally, we'll provide regular updates to the Finance Committee and the board. And the next slide shows the CalPERS UAL funding policy as included in the fiscal year 2021 budget. And this is actually, the policy itself is, I think, the 3rd and 4th page of the budget after the transmittal letter. This is a table from that policy. And the first thing you can see is the additional discretionary payment budgeted for fiscal year 2021 is $4,027,000. The remaining $7.3 million, again, at this point, it's a plan for 2022. We'll revise it for next year's budget, and that would pay off the additional $11.3 million. Also important is that the required UAL payment here is shown at $1.5 million. That's the latest information from the CalPERS actuarial valuation. They haven't revised that amount for us based on the $8 million that we paid them. But after, so for the next valuation we get will reflect the $8 million. And then after we pay the $4 million, it'll be reduced again in the following year. But I've estimated that amount to be $697,000 versus the $1,557,000. So we'll get about an $860,000 savings in fiscal year 2022 after we pay the $4 million. And also worth noting is that the approximate interest savings remaining on these last two payments is $9.8 million. The total interest savings, we already estimated savings on the $8 million at $10.8 million in interest savings. With the additional $9.8 million, we'll be at $20.6 million in total interest savings by paying off the PERS UAL. So next thing we're going to look at are the reserve balances. We've rolled up all of the operations, salaries, CalPERS UAL funding into, and it all finishes with the reserve balance estimates. So looking at the reserve balances, these are the water and sewer reserve balances from 2015 actual to 2019 and then projected through 2021. And as you can see, reserve balances have been increasing but are projected or budgeted to decrease in 2021. And that was expected. That's mainly as a result of some major sewer projects we have coming up, like the San Marcos Interceptor. So we have Encina projects and other major sewer projects. So we've expected that and anticipated for it, and that's been part of our plan all along. And then next, we're going to look at the replacement reserves. So looking at total replacement reserves from 2016 projected all the way through 2025. This slide shows the floor and the ceiling for the reserves. And the floor is, per the reserve policy, the floor is 6 months of operations and 3 years of anticipated capital replacement costs for water and sewer. The ceiling is 6 months of operations and 8 years of replacement capital costs for sewer and 10 years of replacement capital costs for water. That's how we've established our floor and ceiling per our reserve policy. And as you can see, and well, keep in mind, the only thing being approved today is the fiscal year 2021, and the estimated reserves will be 85 million for replacement alone. And even though the replacements are actually decreasing over the 5-year plan, they're still above the floor and well within policy limits. So the next slide, you've seen this slide a lot, but it's a very important slide. This is our days in cash. And it's important because this helps us maintain our rating criteria, which it serves several purposes, including the ability to issue debt and our capacity to issue debt and the rate that we get on that debt. And there are 3 rating agencies. There's Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's. And this slide shows the Fitch AA rating median for days in cash at 545. And even though our days in cash for fiscal year 21 is 405 and goes around 367 in the outer years, in conversations with Fitch, based on their rating criteria, key rating drivers, and components thereof, the district itself, if we maintain our current reserve levels and our management capacity and other aspects, we should be okay with approximately a 300 days in cash threshold. One thing I do want to note is that Fitch has several key rating drivers, and the first one that they actually mention is it's called revenue defensibility, and a major component of revenue defensibility is flexibility in rate setting. And both Fitch and S&P over our last surveillances have been quoted as saying that their ratings are based on the the estimate or the assumption that management will continue to adjust rates to offset increases in wholesale water rates and to provide additional funding for district's upcoming CIP. So flexibility in rate setting and passing through wholesale costs is an important part of our rating criteria. But with that being said, staff believes that overall, our revenues and rates are sufficient to maintain our reserve levels, our debt service coverage, and our days in cash required in order to maintain our credit rating. And with that, I forgot to tell you about our rating. But with that, staff recommends approving the Vallecitos Water District CalPERS unfunded accrued liability funding policy and approve the Vallecitos Water District recommended FY21 budget, which reflects the CalPERS UA. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, directors, any questions, comments, or suggestions, motions? Okay, well,
Martin?
yes.
I move to approve both items 1 and 2 on this chart.
Okay, I'll second that. So it's been moved and seconded that we accept both the Vallecitos Water District CalPERS unfunded accrued liability funding policy, and we approve the Vallecitos Water District recommended 2021 budget. And we'll do roll call. And we'll start with Sanella.
Our general manager is raising his hand, President Evans.
Oh, that doesn't count.
He was doing one of these things.
Yeah,
That works better. Okay, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt because you guys are heading in the right direction, but I just want to let you know that none of the people attending the meeting have expressed a desire to speak.
Oh, so thank you so much. This is the hardest part of doing this, is not seeing anyone.
Yeah.
I apologize to them for not even remembering. Okay, now we can do roll call. And we'll start with Sanella.
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes, but I just want to just once again say, because we didn't have a chance to comment after the motion and the second, great job. As we went through this over the last 7 iterations, there was 2 or 3 times where I wasn't going to vote yes on this budget for various different reasons that I won't repeat tonight. But how it all came together, a total team effort, a lot of work put into it, and I really do appreciate everybody's efforts. So thank you, and I vote yes.
Thank you, Mike. Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
I vote yes with a slight comment. I really want to thank the Finance Committee, especially getting us out of the debt we found ourselves in the UAL funding policy, which gave us false representation of monies we had in reserve prior to them correcting it. Thank you very much. You guys have done a great job.
Thank you, Director Martin. Director Elitharp,
Yes.
was that a yes?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would like to vote yes too, and I want to echo the compliments of Director Sinella and Director Martin, and I also want to add kudos to the Finance Committee because I think that they did a really good job of asking questions, and compliments to staff at all levels for taking time and effort not only to answer their questions but to put them forth in a beautiful presentation that really shows what you've done, and I'm really proud of all of you. So thank you very much. And
I have one question to ask, though. One question.
yes,
Is that green man laying down on the job?
Yeah, he's tired.
it doesn't have a thing going on. Okay, I think I needed one more vote. Was it mine? I forgot where we were stopped.
Yes, good vote.
Oh, I did get a yes from you, Ms. Joseph. So yes from me. So it's been moved and seconded, and it's been approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Now we will move up to item 2.1 on the action items, which is regards to the California Special Districts Association's 2020 Southern Network elections for the board.
Yeah, so I'll jump in and take that. So CSDA has an opening in seat C on their board, and they have 4 candidates that have been nominated. And the CSDA each agency of CSDA is allowed to vote for one person, and votes are due July 10th. So this item is in front of our board to see if the board wants to place a vote for any of these 4 candidates.
Do any of you know, or any of the candidates listed, or have you had a chance to look at them? I think that's a no.
Martin, I had a chance to look, but I really don't know any of them personally, so I would not want to endorse them personally, unless someone else knows them.
All right, Director Snella, was that a?
Yeah, same thing. I just, it's tough to, you read a paragraph about somebody and, that's just not enough.
Director Hernandez?
No, I don't know any of them, and
You're fine.
use the board.
And Director Elitharp?
I don't have any specific recommendation, although in looking at the 4 candidates, Arlene Schaefer looks like she has the most experience.
Thank you. I do know Arlene, but not very well, and she does look well qualified, but I don't know that there's a consensus in voting for her. So do they need to know this tonight for sure, Glenn? Or do we
No.
have a deadline if we choose to look at it and change our mind later?
Sure, the votes are due July 10th, so we do have time, and there's no obligation to place a vote. If the
Okay.
district decided not to place a vote to endorse a candidate, that's fine too.
All right, so do we need, shall we just go with no vote and let it go at that? Or would you like to give it some thought?
I personally would like to just let it go.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, perfect. The board direction is we'll let it go. We don't have to take a vote on that, do we? No.
Nope.
Thank you very much. Item 2.2.
Okay, this is a consideration of an award for a professional services agreement for one of our water projects. And I'm going to turn it over to, I believe Ryan Morgan's going to take this one. Ryan, are you with us?
Good evening.
You're muted.
I'm
There you
going to
go.
share my screen with the group.
Hi, Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yes?
Okay, well, good evening, members of the board. It's my pleasure this evening to present the award for professional services agreement for the Tres Amigos Waterline Replacement Project. The district's Tres Amigos Waterline consists of roughly 19,000 feet of pipelines ranging from 6-inch to 12-inch diameter, consisting of various materials. The water pipelines are located in the far northwest limits of the boundary of the district boundaries, and they were installed in the 1950s and 60s, extending from North Twin Oaks Tank Number 2 in Pleasant Heights Drive to north of Carrillo Drive. The original Tres Amigos line extension project occurred in 1958, which installed a 6-inch and 8-inch diameter tar-wrapped 12 to 14 gauge steel pipeline, which is commonly considered to be a steam pipeline, a thin wall steel pipeline. It's really not adequate for use in pressurized water distribution systems. Due to the frequency of historic pipeline ruptures on this line and the limited ability to repair due to the thin steel pipe wall, this project will replace approximately 7,800 total feet of the Tres Amigos water lines, considered to be most at risk. The alignment does begin at the T-junction in Tres Amigos Ranch Road and travels northbound in district easements and dead ends in the district's northern boundary as illustrated in the plat aerial exhibit shown. Key project objective includes the relocation of existing pipelines out of private backyards and into the right-of-way north of Gopher Canyon. On March 11th, 2020, the district submitted a request for proposals to 4 local engineering firms. The firms were asked to present their experience in designing water replacement projects of comparative scope to the Tres Amigos Waterline project. The 4 firms that staff requested proposals from include Nolte Vertical 5 or NV5, Murray Smith, Kleinfelder, and TY Lin International. On April 23rd, 2020, staff received proposals from all 4 firms. After reviewing the proposals and contacting references, staff rated each firm based on a thorough evaluation of the proposals and labor estimate fee schedule. It was determined that NV5 was going to be selected as the most qualified consultant. On May 20th, 2020, staff met with NV5 to discuss their proposed scope of services, and a few adjustments were made to the proposed services. The scope and fee were revised and finalized. The time and material not to exceed project fee is $318,600. The project is identified in the district's fiscal year 1920 and 2021 budget. The approved capital budget amount is $3,035,000. Funding for the project will come 100% from water replacement funds. As you can see in the table under fiscal impact in the staff report, planning and design services will constitute $318,600 of the total $3,035,000 budget. In addition to what staff estimates, a $2.5 million construction and roughly $50,000 of staff and other services, services during design and construction and overhead materials. So staff's recommendation is for the board to authorize the general manager to enter into a professional engineering services agreement with NV5 in the amount of $318,600 for the design, bid, and engineering services during construction for the Tres Amigos waterline replacement project. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Directors, do you have any questions or comments?
Martin, question.
Okay, Martin.
Ryan, thank you very much. I looked, but I couldn't find showing us how much the bids were from all the competing companies. Was that in the report?
The fee and labor estimate is one component of how we evaluate the proposals that come in from the consultants. Not as we typically show bids from contractors in these staff reports where we'll show the listing of the fees. It's more of a overall evaluation of all the fields of how we evaluate these proposals. And one of those areas is the fee and labor estimate. I will say that as the firms are linked in the order shown in the staff report is the order of of how the firms were evaluated. No, NV5 kind of took a lead over the rest of the field. Murray Smith was a second place, but not close enough to warrant what staff felt would be like a interview selection process.
I appreciate them being the best qualified, but is there a change of policy in not showing the bids any longer? We used to see them.
So, Director Martin, this is James Gumpel. If I can answer that question for you. So, the policy is for construction bids, a bid process. When we go out for selection, it's the most qualified, and the actual cost of the proposals only make up about 20% of the criteria. So we can show them. We can show them if you'd like in future staff reports. It's not a big deal, but it doesn't have a direct relation to awarding, because when you hire a consultant, it's based on most qualified. While the policy is clear, and also the public contracting code for government agencies are pretty clear, it's a low bid, responsive bidder policy that we do for construction contracts. But for professional consultants, it's a best qualified yardstick instead of a price yardstick. So we'd be more than happy to share that with the board and on future board meetings on awards if the board, if that's the board wish. However, please understand that sometimes it won't be the least expensive consultant that gets the job.
Okay, and just so you know, I agree with what you're saying. It's not always price, but the price is always a part of it. It was a part that I think we used to see. And if we change that, that's okay too. I just want to know if we've changed it.
No, there's no policy that says we do it, but it has been shown in the past, and you know what? We could still continue to show them in the future.
James, let me clarify. So if this is a professional contract, right? So it's going to be based on the qualities of and expectations and experience, not just the cost. Is that correct?
That's correct, President Evans, but cost is a component.
It is a component, but it's not the whole picture. However, on construction, that's where the cost becomes part of it, and that's why we've seen bids with costs listed, pricing listed. Those were construction bids. Correct.
So all construction bids, you'll see the cost listed because that's the primary criteria, and there's also a responsiveness component to it, but basically the criteria is cost for construction.
Okay, that I think I was confused also because I was expecting to see the cost, but now I realize you've probably done it this way many times before. Professional ones you don't, and on construction, which is what we usually see, we do see the comparisons. Okay.
Quick question. One more question.
Sure, Martin.
This is a legal question. I don't know, but when they're bidding jobs, do the bidders have the right to know what the other people bid? I guess that's my question. Is an open bidding process? Can people ask you, hey, how come I didn't get the job?
All right, James.
Yes.
Go ahead.
James, you can handle it or I can. I mean, this is for selection of professional services, and per se calling it a bid, Director Martin, typically applies to the public bidding contracts. If in a public bidding context, they're not entitled to see the bids of other people until after all the bids have been submitted. In the context of this RFP process, one of the other proposers could request through a Public Records Act to get information regarding those proposals and what their proposed cost was for providing the services.
That answer
Okay.
that?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, great. And then before we decide if we would like to authorize the GM to take care of this problem, I wanted one more question for you, Ryan.
Yes.
You had said in the opening statements that we're going to do 7,800 feet of it, or 19,000?
the project scope is for 7,800 total feet of the Tres Amigos, what was considered the Tres Amigos water line, which is a total of nearly 19,000 in total.
Okay.
So this,
Okay,
this segment is most at risk with that thin steel wall. The rest of it, a lot of it is cement mortar line and coated steel, where staff and O&M is more comfortable with the existing condition. But this in particular scope of the 7,800 feet is the most at risk.
okay. And that, my question actually was, so when we complete this project, have we taken care of the most at risk, but there's still other to come ahead?
There's
Of
a
the same type of pipeline, or there's variations?
There is a phase 2 component of the Tres Amigos waterline project, which is also in the current year fiscal year budget and the 2021 fiscal year budget. So there will be a future phase of this work. This is the first phase, and kind of replacing again what staff determined has determined to be the most at risk and operationally not inconvenient pipelines. They're located in backyards and things like that.
Thank you for that. Okay, so let's see. We need a motion to authorize the GM. Does anyone care to make a motion?
Martin, make a motion to approve with one question of Mr. Gumpel. Mr. Gumpel, have you gotten a hold of the three amigos and see if they want to kick in on this project?
You know, I've been trying to reach them, but I can't find their current address for some reason.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
I'll second it, Director Elthorpe.
Thank you, Director Elithorp. It's been moved and seconded that we authorize the general manager to enter into professional agreement with NV5 in the amount of $318,600. And there'll be roll call, and we'll start with Sinella.
Yes.
Thank you. Hernandez.
Yes.
Thank you. Martin.
C.
Thank you. Gracias. And Elithorp.
Yes.
Thank you. And I also will vote yes, so it passes unanimously. Thank you. And our next item is item 2.4. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm looking at my thing because we moved it around. And I believe in this one, Director Elithorp, or is it Jim Gilpin, who has something to do with
I believe Director Elithorp will be asking to recuse himself.
Okay.
That's correct, Madam President. I need to recuse myself on item 2.4. I'm one of the project participants or owners listed in the item. So.
All right. So now what will we do? Shut off his mic, or?
Yeah, so I've coordinated this with General Counsel Gilpin, and the most appropriate way is for Director Elithorp to not have his mic on, nor to have his image projected. He hasn't had his image projected all day besides his static headshot, and I can see that he shut off his microphone. So I think he's effectively recused himself from the meeting at this point in time. I think he's still monitoring the meeting, so he should know when we're done with this item, so he can turn his microphone back on when we're completed.
So we'll give him a second at that point to rejoin us for the rest of the items.
Correct, but for now, he already has turned his microphone off.
All right, thank you. So we can move forward with item 2.4.
Right, so 2.4 is an item to accept public improvements constructed by some homeowners along Walnut Hills Drive, and I believe James Gumpel is going to take this item.
Yes, thank you. President Evans, members of the board, first off, can you see the image that I just shared?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as General Manager Prum mentioned, this is to accept the project, which is the Walnut Hills Sewer Line Extension. So the board actually accepted the construction agreement back on December 11th, 2019. And what was constructed was 573 feet of 8-inch PVC sewer, which will initially serve 5 homes. There was 5 homes or 5 single-family lots that were the original 5 project proponents. However, up to 10 homes can receive direct benefit from the installation of this pipeline. So the project participants or owners also requested that there's basically a reimbursement area that's created The district has an ordinance 180, which allows this. And within ordinance 180, basically allows that if somebody else were to connect to this pipeline and get benefit from the pipeline that the original project participants paid for, that they would get reimbursed. There's a 20-year timeline, or basically horizon, on the reimbursement area. And also within the ordinance, it's anticipated that both the project acceptance and the reimbursement area is taken to the board at the same time. However, today, the only thing we actually are considering is the project acceptance. The actual ordinance requires a 10-day notification to all project participants within the area, both that are connecting and also may be connected in the future, as well as a public hearing. So to give time for that 10-day notification, we're going to ask the board to decouple that process and ask for a waiver of the ordinance of the 10-day requirement for acceptance only. We're still holding the normal ordinance requirement for requiring for the public meeting and also to send out the notification to all 10 property owners. So there's a cost breakdown that's within the package. I believe it's on page 161 and spills over into page 162 of your board package. And that will also we'll go into more detail when we bring this project back for the reimbursement area. But today, what we're asking for is the board to waive the 10-day noticing requirement for project acceptance only, and authorize the general manager to accept the project improvements and approve the filing of the notice of completion for Walnut Hill sewer line extension. With that, I'd be happy to answer any question. And I actually do have Engineer Scholl here if you guys have tough questions that I cannot answer.
Are there any questions, and are there any comments from the public on this one, Director Pruitt? Glenn, I was just asking if you'd had anyone from the public wanting to speak.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm looking right now and nobody has indicated a desire to speak on this item.
All right, thank you.
Move to approve. Martin.
Martin, would you like to speak?
Move to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
And a second?
Hernandez.
Thank you. Seconded by Hernandez. It's been moved and approved to waive the 10-day noticing requirement for project acceptance and authorize the general manager to accept the project improvements and approve the filing of a notice of completion for the Walnut Hills Drive sewer main extension. Roll call vote. Director Sinella?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well, and Director Ellertharp has been recused. So it passes, and we can move on to the next item. So do we need to let Director Ellertharp know he can come back?
Looks like he's back on, but maybe he could voice that he's back on.
I am back on. Thank you.
All right.
We
All right.
missed you.
I
Yes.
missed you too.
We had to wait for you to vote before I realized you were gone.
You're clear to flush now.
Oh, I've been flushing all right.
So now we go to item 2.5, the district reopening update, and that I believe will be by you, Glenn.
That will be me. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It says Vallecitos
We
Water
all
District.
can.
I'm sorry?
We all can.
All right, good. All right, so the purpose of this is just to give the board a brief update on where we stand regarding the district reopening. As you know, COVID has had some impacts on our way of doing work around here. So I just want to let you know where we're at and some of the actions that we've already taken. So just a little bit, we'll give a little background, and we're going to break it down into three kind of categories. One is the impacts that COVID has had on our public, the impact that it's had on the board and board meetings, and the impacts it's had on the district employees. And then we'll go into what a reopening looks like. So just a little background. Back on February 14th, the San Diego County Public Health Officer did issue a declaration of local health emergency. And at that time, in early March, the district began preparing for what we would have to do in response to those health orders that we knew would be coming. Back on March 11th, the World Health Organization did declare a worldwide pandemic. And in mid-March, Governor Newsom issued the stay-at-home order. And that's when things really changed. There's a lot of requirements about what you could and couldn't do with businesses. So between March 1st and today, we've been responding to ever-changing orders from both the state and the county and some at the federal levels too. So it's we have groups of people that meet. We were meeting every day for a while, then we cut it back to twice a week. The management team and an expanded group internally to Vallecitos to figure out what we should be doing. We did we put together a virtual EOC to talk about what we should be doing. And it wasn't just an internal process. We also are coordinating with the County Water Authority, who activated their EOC and was coordinating with all their member agencies. And I've also been coordinating with all the North County wastewater agencies to keep track on what everybody's doing and try to look for the best practices to address the COVID issues. So going to the specific groups, for the board activities, so for both the official board meetings and all the committee meetings, we moved to a virtual environment back on April 2nd. We settled on the web conferencing platform called Zoom, which we're using tonight. I think it's worked pretty well. It's been a bit of a challenge at times, particularly on nights when you have closed sessions, going in and out of closed sessions and regular sessions, and having directors recuse themselves. And it's been a bit challenging, but I think we adapted pretty well. So the effects on the public counter and the lobby have been closed since March 19th, right after Governor Newsom declared the stay-at-home order. So that really affects our engineering counter and our customer service counters. So we're handling almost all of those. We're handling all of those remotely at this point in time. So people aren't. The front door is locked. People can't come in, but that's about to change in the near future. The effects on the employees, Vallecitos employees, have been greater, I think. So some of the things we've done, we've certainly tried to step up our cleaning and disinfection. We sent home staff that could easily telecommute and work from home. Then as things started to ratchet up, we sent home even more Building A, the administrative folks. We sent even more home where telecommuting was possible. It may not be ideal, but it was possible. And that was in an effort to comply with the governor and county regulations that we should use telecommuting whenever possible. We also split the O&M shifts. So we took all of our operations and maintenance folks and broke them into two groups, and half would stay home 1 week while the other half was working, and then the next week they would shift. And the reason we did that is because if we did have anybody infected by COVID, we didn't want it to spread to all of our O&M staff, because there's a lot of, they obviously need to be ready and available to respond to emergencies and keep the system running. We've been implementing physical distancing around the offices, requiring face coverings if you can't keep that physical distance. So if you're less than 6 foot separation, you have to have a face covering. That really affected us in like our vehicles. Often we have crews of people. It's not just one person per vehicle. We would put multiple people in vehicles. And when COVID hit, we couldn't keep the 6 foot separation. So we made it one person per vehicle. And if that was impossible, then people were required to wear face coverings. And then recently we did add temperature taking. Again, reacting to the county and state regulations that were out there. We now take everybody's temperature when they first arrive to work at the beginning of the day. And if they exceed a certain temperature, which is 100.4 degrees, we're required to send them home. Or if they're exhibiting any COVID-like symptoms, we send people home. So fortunately, we haven't had one person with any COVID symptoms at work, nor has anybody failed the temperature test. So that's good, but it doesn't mean we don't continue to take those temperatures. So looking to the future, we're kind of looking at this kind of as a last out, first in approach. So we're going to undo things kind of in the reverse order of the way they were done. So we'll look at for the public perspective, the engineering counter service. We're going to start to come back with a by appointment only. So right now, everything's done remotely, either telephone or video conferencing. And pretty soon, and it'll be later this month, that will allow people wanting engineering counter services to actually come in. But it'll be by appointment only so that we can avoid rushes of people and have crowding at the engineering counter. And then probably by the middle of July, we'll have a full face-to-face access. People who just come in without appointments. That will be dependent on what the county does, but we're estimating it should be about mid-July. Similarly with customer service counter, we're going to be probably a little slower with that because we're going to have a lot of people coming in. Way more people will come into the customer service counter than would come into the engineering counter. So we're being as diligent as we can. We're putting floor markings to show people how far they have to be separated. You've all experienced that when you've gone to grocery stores and other stores, making sure people keep their 6-foot separation. We're making sure we have disinfection products available. We're posting signs to let the public know what we've done to keep them safe and what's allowed and what isn't. And all you can see, read the other things that we're doing there. And pretty soon we'll progress to the same thing where we're having less and less restrictions. But again, it will be as the county dictates. And the bottom line, something we're still working with is taking the temperature of everybody, whether they're coming to the engineering counter or the customer service counter. We may need to take temperatures for everybody that comes in through the building, but that again will be directed by the public health order. Regarding board meetings, what's happening, and right now, we're all doing video conferencing meetings for board meetings and committee meetings. But when the public health order allows non-household members to get together, we will start to resume our traditional in-house or in-person board meetings. But that will be kind of a hybrid approach, I would say, as we go forward. There's still a very vulnerable population out there, and the county defines it as people greater than 65 years old or compromised immune systems. They may not want to be out in public or in contact with the public. So I see a hybrid approach, whether it's by staff or board members or the members of the public, that even when we start to resume meetings in our board chambers, we'll probably still carry the meetings via the Zoom platform. And that would be offered to staff, board members, and the public. And not until we've declared victory on COVID, not we, but the county and the state and the federal government, will we go back to the old way of doing things with no restrictions. And even then, I can imagine that we'll always have a more enhanced virtual environment than we had before COVID. So the employees, so the operations and maintenance workers, I mentioned that we were kind of half on, half off. They're all back effective this past Monday. So June 1, we called them back in to work. Certain restrictions are still in place with face coverings and physical distancing and things like that. The people that were telecommuting, they're going to be phased back into the offices starting in the middle of this month. It won't be flipping a switch. They won't all come back at the same time, but we'll see which ones can come in more easily than others. We'll certainly continue to step up our disinfection and cleaning protocols. We'll keep up with the temperature checks and maintaining physical distance. I think we'll still do a lot of video conferencing meetings. Just like we do with the board meetings, our internal meetings are virtually almost all electronic meetings. We're not getting together like we used to huddle around a table and talk about things. We're doing things remotely. And it's good, but I don't think it's quite as good as getting face-to-face, but you make do with what you have. We're not doing any travel. There's not a lot of places to travel right now, but even when things open up, we'll probably restrict our travel for personnel with respect to COVID and for budget considerations as well. And we're clearly not doing any large all hands type meetings. The most important thing to keep in mind is that we're looking at a lot of factors, the feds, the state, and the county. So we're looking to see when the public health order is lifted. And because right now it does say telecommunicating shall be used to, I think words that basically say to the maximum extent possible. We want to make sure that we can maintain good productivity. So if we can leave some people at home to telecommute and they're still being productive, those will probably be the last group of people that will be brought back into the office. We'll keep up our cleaning protocols. The amount of staff that we have cannot keep up with the enhanced cleaning, so we have been paying contractors to come in and help us with the cleaning efforts. We have to make sure that we don't outpace the supply chain. So if we bring everybody in and we can't get enough disinfecting supplies and facial masks, then we've gone too fast. We want to make sure the supply chain is keeping up with us, or we're not outpacing them. And obviously, we want to maintain the physical distancing. We're actually we've relocated some employees that are not telecommuting, and they're in different areas of the office just to maximize physical distancing. And we'll continue to do that even when we call people back into the office until the all clear is given by the county. I think we have one more. Yeah, so just this last slide, just to talk about the supplies. So Tricia Wolslayer is our risk management supervisor, and she's been doing a great job leading this effort. But just to point out some of the things, we just talked today, and she said that she was able to convince the County of San Diego to give us 8,000 disinfecting wipes. So that's awesome. So we didn't have to pay for those. We also received face shields from the county, and we got some the N95, the higher grade respirators and facial masks from the county as well. And we also received 2 automatic temperature scanners, that upper right picture there. It's an automated device that people walk in, you look at it, it combines facial recognition with temperature scanning to verify that every employee that's coming to the office had their temperature taken and wasn't a threat to anybody else. This helps relieve some of the personnel that we've assigned to sit there and take everybody's temperature in the morning. But we just received these, so we're working the bugs out as we go along, but hopefully that'll free up some of the bodies to do more productive work. So that was it. That's just kind of an overview of where we were and where we're heading and where we're at right now. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but bottom line, we're so thankful that nobody in the Vallecitos family or their extended families has come down with COVID, as far as I'm aware. And that's great. And we hope that it stays that way. And even when we open the building to our customers, we want to make sure that nobody gets infected when that happens. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board to see if you have any questions.
Yes, Director Hernandez.
Yes, one of your slides had that we could meet as a board, but people over 65, they may still have to be virtual. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, so I don't know if it says they have to be, but they've been identified as at a high risk. So I think my recommendation going forward would be this hybrid approach where we may start conducting board meetings in the board chambers, but maybe not everybody would be there that would normally be there. So for example, Director Hernandez, if you chose not to attend a board meeting physically, you could still attend via the Zoom platform. So there may be some IT issues to work through there, but we can make that happen. Similarly with members of the public, they may not feel comfortable coming to a public venue and they may want to monitor the meetings. You may remember that we televise our meetings, but it's not real time. So in the old days, the pre-COVID, we would record the meeting and then it could be available for display later, but people couldn't monitor it remotely in real time. I think that's the next step that we want to go towards, where the public could monitor things on a real-time basis, even after or as we transition back to our old way of doing things. I hope that answers your question.
Well, the sooner I can get back to the board meeting, the better I'll feel about it. Personally.
Yeah, and we certainly want to make sure that we can get proper social distancing between board members. The dais is fairly large, but we haven't done the math yet to figure out if that's a 6-foot spacing. Would we need to wear masks during a meeting? Those are the details that we have to work through in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Sinella.
Hey, Glenn, thanks for the comprehensive update. This is very good. I need one favor and then one question. When you have time, can you either text or email me the make and model of that temperature scanner? I'd be kind of curious to. Okay. It looks like something I have, I've seen a number of them lately, but I have not seen one like that. Okay. And then what lessons have you learned? You said that you found that there's some of the workforce that have been pretty productive at home. Would you say, based off of the service levels and the data that you've seen so far, is there a possibility that these folks can work from home permanently, or is that something that you don't even want to pursue at this time, or don't have enough information?
Yeah, I would say it's the latter. It's a little too early to tell. The preliminary results are very promising. I don't know if I'm quite at the place where I can say, yes, this group can work from home permanently, but I can say that there are certain groups where it works better than other groups. And the most extreme example is like the O&M folks, the field personnel, that clearly doesn't work remotely. So that's a group that we need to get back as soon as possible, and we already have. When you look at the administrative folks, there's varying degrees of their productivity remotely. And we have those discussions, and we've been talking about that. And that'll be that as we phase in, the people that can be less productive at home will come back first, and the people that are most productive at home will probably be the last to come back, and we'll evaluate whether they truly do need to come back. But that's on our radar screen.
How are you handling situations with employees who might be in one of the higher risk categories or have childcare issues?
Yeah, so that's really a big consideration for us. As we bring people back into the workforce, we're going to identify those folks that may be at a higher risk category, and that being at a high risk category will trump whether they're less or more productive or effective at home, right? Even if their nature of their job doesn't lend itself well to remote working, we're not going to bring them back if we think that that would expose them to any risk. The last thing you mentioned is probably our biggest concern is the healthcare or the childcare issues. So with it's because of the schools primarily. So people are forced into more full-time childcare because their kids aren't going to school. So that's another factor we're considering when we start to bring people back into the workplace. Now, having said that, the traditional end of the school year is coming. So most of the employees would have been figuring out what they were going to do anyway, but we're not sure what impacts COVID may have on those traditional summer programs. So we'll be working with our employees to try to figure out how to, safely integrate them and still make sure that we're sensitive to their needs as parents and guardians.
Well, that's great. It's obvious that you put in a lot of thought, you and your team, and again, thank you for this very comprehensive report.
Well, thanks. The team I'm working with has been great, and we have these conversations all the time, and we haven't completed the conversations, but they're ongoing, and we'll get there soon.
Any further comments? Well, I will say I'm very impressed, Glenn. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Are you there?
I'm there.
You're there. What
I'm
you've
there.
been doing and the problems that you've had to, and challenges that you've had to meet. And so happy to hear that nobody's been affected by it. So thank you. Thank you for the update. That was incredible.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so now that is the end of our action items. We'll move on to the general manager's report.
Yeah, just two quick items. One is that I may have mentioned before that we were scheduled to have a bid opening for our San Marcos sewer interceptor project. It's a big sewer project. It's over in the area with the Creek District project. So we had the bid opening on May 28th, I believe it was, last Thursday. We received 10 bids, which is good. I mean, you always like when you get a lot of bidders. The bids range from 6.6 million up to 10.2 million. That's quite a range. That's a 50% increase from the low bid to the high bid. And the low bid was just slightly above the engineer's estimate, right around the engineer's estimate. So that's good. That's the good news. I think we had mentioned when we were talking about the budget last time that we were hopeful that the financial impacts of COVID would result in a really aggressive bidding climate. And I'm still hopeful of that. The fact that we got 10 bidders is a good sign. I was hoping the bids would come in a little lower, but anytime they come in right about the engineer's estimate, you don't complain about that. So pretty soon we'll be bringing an item forward to the board to award the contract. We have to make sure that they've submitted all the right paperwork and they're qualified and all that, but you'll see that maybe at the June 17th meeting. So the only other thing I wanted to say is thank you all to the board members for your patience in the budget process, and particularly for the finance committee members. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of numbers. And I know we deal with it Wes has been dealing with it for probably 60 hours a week. You guys get to see it in a short period of time, and we ask you to digest that information in real time, and you've done a great job. So I appreciate your attention, and I really appreciate the support tonight. So that's all I have to share.
All right. Mr. Gilpin.
Just briefly, we've been struggling with the COVID issues as well, and it's amazing what Glenn and his staff have done at the district regarding it. I went into my office on Monday and learned that for the COVID in the elevators, they had 2 people can get on the elevator, one in opposite corners. And just the logistics of dealing with 6-foot social distancing and the impacts on business is just amazing. From a legal standpoint, from time to time, we've talked about 1090 conflicts of interest. In 2015, there was a decision that really impacted independent contractors who deal with this, particularly design companies, in that if they designed or participated in the preparation of contracts, they couldn't then participate in the subsequent contract, i.e. under design, build, or lease back scenarios. The courts and the FPPC have kind of been whittling it back from that Fresno decision, and there was a recent 1090 letter and for the engineering staff. It may be of interest where they found that where a firm had participated in the 60% design, that firm could still participate in the design build. So we're seeing a little bit loosening of kind of the concern over 1090 conflict of interest. The impacts to us is that, you've got a designer on who was best situated to deal with the project, and they couldn't participate in the project on a design build basis. But that's all I have, President Evans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Regarding the San Diego Water Authority, County Water Authority, we had our meeting last week, and probably the most significant thing that we accomplished after much decision and talk was we did schedule the public hearing for the rate increase on June 25th. And there was a lot of talk and questions about how the situation's being handled. As you know, the Metropolitan Water District has a significant rate increase of almost 9%. And the Water Authority is at this point looking at a 6.3 overall. Ours is less because we get desal water, but it's a significant amount of money. So there's also at this time, still us, meaning CWA, is still accepting is the word, questions, concerns, suggestions, and comments after the several hours we discussed such things at this last meeting. And I know the general manager is sending a letter in with our comments as well, and a few more questions for them, and they're going to take those into consideration and put those in the final presentation on June 25th. There's one interesting possibility, probably a very slight possibility, but they did a lot of work at the delegates with the Metropolitan Water District, and they got several other agencies up there with them were trying to get the water Metropolitan to delay the process and do a little more research, because as I think I've told you before, they absolutely changed nothing in their budget. There was not one single deferral or removal of anything, and they wanted some more work done. Well, Metropolitan didn't want to do that as a whole, but they did get them to the point where they have agreed that in September, the Metropolitan will look at their budget again, even though they've already passed it, but they'll look at it again and reconsider and see if there's an opportunity to lower rates. Now, that would be exciting if they did it, and they probably won't, but I think it's a little bit of step of improvement that they're even willing to reconsider it, and that the board voted for that. In regards to that, then Sandy has agreed that we'll go ahead and move forward on June 25th, but she will definitely bring it back if there's any changes at that time from Met and pass that on to the Water Authority members. So a little bit of hope that people may get realistic. And other than that, we have a meeting coming up in a week, and then the next meeting is the end of the month. I think that's the biggest part of my report. So thank you. Encino Wastewater Authority, did you have meetings?
No, we have not.
You did not. Okay.
Yes, we did.
Pardon?
We had one on the 27th.
You had one on the 27th? Okay. Oh, coming up on the 27th, you mean?
No, on May 27th.
Oh, you had one?
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And is there anything to report?
Nothing that jumps out at me. I think I talked about mine at the Capital Committee meeting report on the 20th.
Okay. And Ms. Director Martin, did you have something to report?
On the 27th, we did discuss slightly the overview of the budget, which is coming up in the next month or two.
Okay. Thank you. And standing committees, I don't know if you've had any.
No finance, no.
No finance time. All right. Director reports of any sort?
Yes, North County EDC had a webinar also on the 27th.
Okay.
That's usually where they have the 4 or 5 hours breakfast and lunch, and this year they didn't have that, obviously, but they did have a webinar that went on for about 2 hours. And the featured speaker was the same as they normally have, Mark Vittner, Wells Fargo senior economist for Wells Fargo, and Josh Williams, B&W Research, a research firm showing North County indicators. Also William Bruvner from Sandag and Miguel Jesus, CSUSM. Quite a few interesting things, and of course everyone's talking about the virus. But the interesting thing, I'll go down in the history books, is that 2020 is a year where we had the least unemployment of all time and the most unemployment of all time in the same month, which is kind of incredible when you think about it, how quickly it hit. But it was very interesting. The indicators for North County were what we all suspect they would be, but it was interesting to see how they put it together. Mark from Wells Fargo, he doesn't think we're going to see a full recovery. His crystal ball says to the fourth quarter of 2021. So not as much a V as a potential W in the return. That's it.
Wow, that was interesting. How did you
Sure.
like doing the webinars?
Yeah, I thought it was very good, very interesting. Again, it always depends on subject matter. If the subject matter is interesting, as Wes and our team makes it, it's very interesting. I would think if it gets dull, it'd probably put you to sleep, staring at a screen. But that was a very good meeting, I thought. They had 200 participants.
Wow.
Is the number they called out they had. So, but they usually have 400 in a conference at the seminar. So about half the amount actually do the webinars.
Yeah, I think that's a good turnout, though. Thank you very much, Director Martin.
Sure.
Anything under other business regarding meetings or director comments and future agenda items? Well, then
One future agenda item I
Yes.
would recommend is that we have a platinum star ceremony for our general manager, who has done such a fantastic job through this entire time, and really working with staff on the finance committee has been fantastic. And it's, as much as we praise them, it's all under the command of the General Pruitt, who can't say enough about the job he's doing. Thank you.
all
Thank you
right.
very much.
Thank you. Okay, well then, I would just like to thank all of you who are listened in for being part of our meeting tonight. I want to thank each one of you on the board and staff who helped. I appreciate your patience with me and your willingness to take turns and express yourself. I find this such an interesting and crazy sort of way of doing business, but I think we're doing a good job. And with that, Good night. The meeting is adjourned.